Kumba at Busch Gardens Tampa is one of the most intense coasters I've ridden. This B&M looper bombards you with strong positive G-forces that will sure to make you gray out. In this video, I will explain my thoughts on Kumba and ultimately review exactly if this coaster still holds up after 30 years. Kumba's origins begin with Batman the Ride at Illinois' Six Flags Great America, the first inverted coaster created from Busch and Mabillard. How important this coaster was to the amusement industry cannot be understated. I'll probably run a poll on whether I should make a Batman the Ride video, but one of the immediate effects was that parks were going to B&M left and right for their loopers. One of the earliest customers they had was Anheuser-Busch, the beer company that happened to own the Busch Gardens parks. Busch Gardens in Tampa Bay was looking for a new signature attraction. This happened to take place around the same time that Batman the Ride was opening up. Seeing the quality of their inverted coasters, Busch Gardens Tampa approached B&M to create a large-scale sit-down looper. So Busch Gardens and B&M got to work to create the massive inversion machine named Kumba. Kumba is a Busch and Mabillard sit-down looper. This coaster stands 143 foot, 44 meters tall, with speeds of 60 miles per hour or 97 kilometers per hour, and traverses 3,978 feet, 1,212 meters of track. I think this was the largest coaster B&M built at the time of its opening. The color scheme looks a bit faded, but I dig the colors. They blend well with the setting it sits in. The name Kumba comes from the African Congo language for roar, and what a fitting name because Kumba runs crazy loud as it gives off a roaring noise. This helps in finding where Kumba is because it is a little isolated. To get to Kumba, you have to walk to the back of Busch Gardens and then take this little pathway to get to Kumba. As a result, Kumba often gets one of the shorter waits in the park, unless they run one train that day, which happens quite a bit due to the ride's age. Kumba runs with a 32-passenger trains with B&M's usual over-the-shoulder restraints, but unlike most of B&M's loopers, Kumba's trains have a floor. I recommend leaning forward because Kumba isn't exactly the smoothest coaster. Specifically, there were a couple of potholes during the ride. Also, the back of the train is going to be rougher, but it's also more intense than the front. But by leaning forward, this minimizes any headbanging. When you dispatch out of the station, you first turn to the right and go up the chain lift. This chain lift swiftly takes you to the top. Because of where the lift is positioned, you mostly see flat land and the nearby neighbors, or in this POV that I'm showing, leftover spare parts. You make it up the 143 foot, 44 meter tall lift. Like every 90s B&M, you have this pre-drop before descending the curving drop. This pre-drop doesn't do much, however it does serve a purpose to reduce stress on the chain lift. Plus, this pre-drop helps to build speed. Then you descend down this twisted drop. For the most part, I like the elements that Kumba offers. This is not one of them. This drop is honestly the weakest part of the ride. It's because it doesn't pull much force at all. Mostly, no airtime. On top of that, it's rather shallow too, so not much to get excited over. It's after this when Kumba gets elite. Now for the duration of the ride, you're being punched non-stop by strong positive G-forces. It all starts with the vertical loop that threads through the chain lift. While most vertical loops do nothing for me, Kumba's loop on the other hand pushes me to my seat. It also makes my vision a little fuzzy. This is due to the G-forces pushing blood away from the head and into the feet. It's the opposite effect of when you get stuck upside down. The same forces can be seen with the next 4 inversions. Next is the dive loop. This is actually the first coaster to feature a dive loop, a type of element inspired by an airplane stunt maneuver. The track twists upwards and to the side and then dives down towards the ground in a half loop. Not only do you have intense positives, but you also have a bit of whip into it. But then comes the best element of Kumba, the 0G roll. While the G's aren't as pronounced, the whip on this roll is insane. You traverse the roll extremely fast. This 0G roll whips you so hard to the side, it even has a bit of laterals to it. This roll has been given the name the Hell Roll by enthusiasts, showing just how powerful this element is. Then you hit this little speed hill that honestly doesn't do much aside from showcasing its speed. This leads into the Cobra Roll. This Cobra Roll gives a little whip, but otherwise gives faint positives. Then you twist left into the mid-course brake run. From my experience, the mid-course slows the trains down ever so slightly. Then you dip down while twisting to the left. No airtime, which I mean, what do you expect? This is a looping coaster. But watch out for this pull-out. In general, Kumba is, it's smooth enough. It has a noticeable rattle, which yes, you'll notice, but it won't bother you. However, this pullout right here has a very nasty pothole. When you traverse it, you violently shake into your over-the-shoulder restraints, which is why it's so important to lean forwards on Kumba. It's so bad that you can see literal dents on the track, and it's even more noticeable if you're sitting in the back. Anyway, what follows is the iconic interlocking corkscrews. Everyone has probably seen these corkscrews before when they search for roller coasters. The interlocking corkscrews are two corkscrews broken up by a turn. By this point, the mid-course took away a bit of your speed, so there isn't enough speed for you to feel a huge amount of positives. What the corkscrews do offer is nice whip. During the element, I always feel like I'm being thrown to the side. Obviously, keep your head forward because corkscrews aren't exactly the most fun with over-the-shoulder restraints. A good corkscrew like this will carry in the whippiness. After this is a banked hill that slightly tips you to the side, but not really, given the over-the-shoulder restraints. You enter this tunnel, and this is where you can appreciate Kumba's speed. Then you enter this very low-to-the-ground helix. Surprisingly, this helix offers good forces as it pushes you into your seat. And because of how close it is to the ground, you feel like you can touch the grass. Or in my friend Julian's case, he actually did touch the grass, and he said it hurts like crazy. After this, there's one more turn into the brakes. This completes 3,978 feet, 1,212 meters of track. Kumba is one of the most intense rides I've ridden. The 7 inversions somehow try to drain the energy out of you. That's a little surprising if you've ridden other B&Ms that isn't this one. A lot of B&M loopers aren't exactly known for being the most intense thing out there. Aside from the 0G rolls, the inversions on most B&M loopers don't do too much. The only loopers from B&M I constantly find intense are their inverted coasters and maybe a couple of sit-down outliers, which isn't really saying much considering I don't even have 100 credits. Kumba, luckily, isn't like most. It always feels like Kumba is running way faster than it's supposed to. Compared to, say, their floorless coasters, Kumba has faster pacing as the trains traverse the elements much quicker, and this pacing results in more intense inversions, which makes these inversions that I otherwise find lackluster to be exciting. After 30 years of operations, Kumba is still holding up today, and it's even better than much newer loopers built today. So what would I rank it? I would give it an 80 out of 100. Kumba is one of the best coasters for positive G-forces. While I prefer coasters that have more focus on airtime, Kumba is an excellent option to get your positive G-force fix. Too bad those G-forces don't exactly make it the most re-rideable. After a few back-to-back rides, I usually come off drained and in need of water. Really the only complaint, well besides the lack of theming of course, cause well, it's Busch Gardens, is the vibration and potholes during the ride. This may cause a little discomfort, but like I said, lean forwards to mitigate any discomfort. However, those rattles lead to my biggest concern with Kumba, the ride's longevity. See, I'm making this review now as a sort of prequel to my Incredible Hulk ride analyze episode. Kumba and Incredible Hulk share a lot of similarities. Both are green, 7 inversion, B&M sit-down loopers in Florida from the 1990s, which makes this next part even more concerning. In 2015, Incredible Hulk had to shut down because that coaster reached the end of its service life. Hulk's operations caused the track to heavily get worn out. Universal would end up replacing all of the Hulk's tracks, trains, and queue. Well, Kumba is in a very similar circumstance to where Hulk was. Kumba is even older than Hulk. In fact, Kumba is about to be open for double the amount of the original Hulk. So Kumba is nearing the end of its service life. And the other problem is that Busch Gardens Tampa might not want to invest in a Kumba retrack. Retracking a steel coaster doesn't bring much attendance, but costs just as much as a brand new ride. Considering Kumba doesn't get much ridership anymore, Busch Gardens might not think it's worth it to retrack it. And the other problem is that if Busch Gardens wants to retrack their classic, they might choose to retrack Montu instead. Montu is in a better position for retracking as it's more popular and better than Kumba. Not to mention that Kumba's plot of land makes it expandable for future expansions. Luckily, Montu is still in high quality condition, so there is a small chance for Kumba to be saved. But for now, we'll just have to wait and see what Busch Gardens does with Kumba. I advise making your way down to BGT and riding this classic, because you'll never know how long we'll have until this legend leaves this world. So that is my review of Kumba at Busch Gardens Tampa. What is your thoughts on Kumba? How does this compare to other loopers for you? Leave all that down in the comments. If you like this video, which if you watched at the end it means you did, I advise leaving a like. Also, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. Doing this convinces the YouTube algorithm to push this content to more viewers. Finally, watch these other videos because they are just as good as this. This is the Coaster Flood, riding out.